Hello my friends, welcome to my channel, Lindy's Magpie Reads. If you're new here, I'm Lindy and I read a lot. Before I go into the books that I have finished this week, I want to back up to something that I said about a book in my previous Friday reads. I'm talking about Lessons in Chemistry. Now, I talked about how I was turned off initially by the cover. It had given me the wrong idea of the kind of book that it is. When I was editing the video, and I was a bit taken aback by the somewhat dismissive tone that I had when I described the cover as chick lit, and I hadn't realized that I harbored those kind of discriminatory attitudes towards some kinds of fiction that I don't normally read. But also, I put together a poll. I chose 6 covers that I found on Goodreads for Lessons in Chemistry. Cover number 1 is the US cover, also the Canadian cover, so that's the one that I read. Number 2 is Italian. Number 3 is Estonian. And in the bottom row, from left to right again, is number 4 is Russian, number 5 is British, and number 6 is German. So I put this up on Litzy, which is bookish social media, if you're not familiar with Litzy. You know, it was very informal, but about 25 readers responded, and the most votes, 12 votes, went to the British cover, and 9 votes went to the German cover, my personal favorite, with just a few for some of the other covers, but not one single person voted for the US cover. And funnily enough, when I spent so much time looking at all of these covers, I grew to have more appreciation for that US cover. And when I looked through descriptors from a whole bunch of different reviews of Lessons in Chemistry, so many of these words would also apply to chick lit. For example, that the tone is droll, hilarious, comic, ironic, the dialogue is witty, it's about a smart woman, and this woman is idiosyncratic, quirky, awkward. The book is described as charming and adorable, talks about the whimsical aspect, that it's heartwarming, that it's triumphant, fun, refreshing, page-turning, zippy, kicky. There's a breakneck pace, it's energetic, it's about feminist empowerment and the need to be true to oneself. And a lot of those things could be said about books that fall into the chick lit category. Even though chick lit as a term isn't something that is used very often nowadays, I think it came into use along with Bridget Jones's Diary in the 1990s and stopped being used sometime in the 2000s, considered too sexist, I think. We still kind of know what's meant by chick lit, that it's a type of fiction typically focusing on a young professional woman who is quirky, smart, witty, and her social life and her relationships are what the book focuses on. A couple of days ago, Jolene of Bookworm Adventure Girl did a poll from the Penguin Random House site. The poll is, what kind of reader are you? I will link her video below and also the link to the quiz if you're interested in doing it. It's one of those marketing ploys where they get information from readers, and it's also fun for readers to participate in. Well, I was told that my reading habits are driven by my desire to be a better person, a better friend, a better ally, a better boss, whatever it is you're setting your mind to, and that I read to be inspired, to learn, and to gain a fresh perspective, often about cultures and experiences different from my own. Now, one of the questions is whether you read fiction or nonfiction, and I read about 1/3 nonfiction and 2/3 fiction, so on the slider bar I had it quite far towards fiction. But at the end of this quiz, the books that this algorithm showed that I would probably enjoy, because other readers like me enjoyed, are Atomic Habits, Obama's A Promised Land, Think and Grow Rich, Getting to Yes, You Are a Bad Ass at Making Money, and a book about a hockey player. I could tell this only from the cover because I've never heard of Willie O'Ree. Not one book on this list is one that I'm interested in reading, so bad job, algorithm. Which reminds me that I got a pitch recently from a book agent. I get these in my email all the time, and I very rarely respond to requests to send me books to review. And this one was described as small town Texas rom-com with a princess twist. That it couldn't be farther from what I'm interested in reading. No. Feel free to try out that "what type of reader are you" quiz and report back in the comments below if you do so. I'm curious. My YA book club met online earlier this week, and we always choose 2 books at a time. So this month we were talking about Does My Body Offend You? And Murder for the Modern Girl. I reviewed both of those books in different videos, so I will link down below if you're interested in what I had to say about them. But one of the things that we've noticed in our YA book club is that there always tends to be some kind of interesting and unexpected connection between the 2 books that we choose. And in this case, it's that both of them have alternating points of view. In Murder for the Modern Girl, it's one author, and the alternating points of view are a boy character and a girl character. In Does My Body Offend You? It is 2 different authors, one for each point of view. And it got us talking about how interesting that type of collaboration is. And we would like to read more. So if you know of some YA books that are written in that style with 2 authors where, and this is important, that the authors are from different ethnic backgrounds. That's what we're particularly interested in. So please leave suggestions down below. I've been working on a craft project this past week. I've been playing around with natural dyes this week, and I drew inspiration from Sasha Doerr's book, Natural Palettes. Inspiration's right in the title here. But one of the sections that she's got is on compost color and getting dyes from avocado pits, golden onion skins, carrot tops, pomegranate rinds, mandarin peels, black bean water. And, okay, that's it for this section. So I dyed some alpaca wool, 70% alpaca, 30% wool yarn with black bean water. Really love the color that I got. The wool has been mordanted with alum beforehand. I'm not 100% sure about how wash fast this will be, but I am going to let the color sit for a month before I do some wash testings before I actually knit with it. And I also used brown onion skins to make this gorgeous orangey color. It's even richer looking than what you can see on the screen. It's a deeper, rustier orange. The camera's not really picking it up. I'm really happy with that too. And I used avocado pits and peels to get this shade, which again, it's a little deeper than what I can see on the screen, more pink. And then just today, I finished doing this skein. I started out with a fawn natural color of the alpaca wool. This is what the natural color looks like that the others came from. But this one started off with a pale brown, and I put it in pomegranate peels and then into an iron bath to get this sort of gray-green color. So this is what all of the colors look like together. Yeah. Still in progress and doing some other natural dyeing as well. When I make a big batch of dye, or a pot of dye that's large enough to dye a skein of yarn, there's always some color left. And so with the exhaust baths, I've been dyeing various things made of cotton. So I will pop in some images here. It has been really cold lately, going down to -28 at night. I feel really fortunate that my kitchen taps did not freeze, but it's convenient to use the cold outdoors as a fridge sometimes. I made a big pot of black bean soup, and before I put some in the freezer, I put it outside to chill. So those are some of the things that have been going on besides reading. But while I'm doing these kinds of crafts, I'm also listening to audiobooks. So 3 of the books that I'm going to be telling you about are in audio format, and the other 2 are graphic novels. I've got nothing but fiction to tell you about today, and I'm going to start with one that I read digitally on the library's Hoopla app, and it's called Onion Skin by Edgar Camacho. There's a kind of serendipity there, since onion skins are one of the kitchen scraps that I used for making dye. So Edgar Camacho wrote this in Spanish. He is a Mexican cartoonist, and he translated it to English himself. It's the story of 2 people, Nira and Rolando, and they met because they both liked the same band, and both of them had dissatisfaction and a desire for freedom, and they end up doing a food truck business together. And there's a romantic element as well. One of the things that really appealed to me about this graphic novel is the slapstick sense of humor. The opening scene has a food truck flying down the road with vegetables flying out the back and a bad guy following on motorcycle with 2 slices of tomato that end up right in front of his eyes. That gives you a sense of the tone. You can see that the art is really expressive with some nice rich colors, sort of sunset kind of colors. Warm, expressive, a really good match for the uplifting tone of this story. The one thing that I liked less is that there's a lot of jumping around in a non-linear timeline. Other than that, I thought it was great. Next, I want to tell you about this Korean graphic novel, The Waiting, by Keum Suk Gendry-Kim, and it is translated by Janet Hong. Last year during Readathon, I read this author's novel, Grass, which is also excellent. I will link that video below. This one is inspired by the author's mother's experience. There are 2 timelines, contemporary Seoul and 1950s North Korea. It's heavy and I'm going to put it down. I'll put images up. So after the period of Japanese colonialism, communists came into Korea, and shortly after that there was the Korean War in 1950. And there was a lot of internal displacement of people. Many people from North Korea fled the violence and ended up in South Korea, but so many families were split up, and there are hundreds of thousands of people who over the years have tried to contact their relatives. And that's what this story is about. The author fictionalized this because of the grief that remains for these people. They're now in their 80s and 90s, many of them. And also because there's a fear on the part of some of the people that she interviewed, there's a fear that there would be retribution for their relatives in North Korea. It's a very emotional, hard-hitting story about how individuals are affected by these greater forces, war, being separated from loved ones, and also caring for an aging parent, and the continuing effect of patriarchal ideas. For example, the character in the novel talks about how her mother, from the time she was a little girl, got used to eating fish heads and fish tails, while her father and brothers ate the better parts of the fish, because boys were more important, boys got to go to school, that sort of thing. If you're interested in women's issues from around the world, I highly recommend The Waiting. Next up, Stoneblind by Natalie Haynes. I listened to the audiobook and it is read by the author. This is a retelling of the myth of Medusa, and it is from a very feminist perspective. Medusa was raped by Poseidon. This happened in the temple of Athene. Athene was so pissed off at the desecration that she punished Medusa by given her the snake hair and also cursed her to turn any living thing she looked at to stone. Blame the victim. So the story is told from many different viewpoints, some human and many not, including the Gorgoneon, which is the amulet that has the image of the head of Medusa on it. Athene chose to put it on her breastplate or else on her shield, I can't remember which. And when Natalie Haynes is narrating the parts from the viewpoint of the Gorgoneon, her rage really comes through. And another viewpoint is from some trees. Apollo voted for us. He's always had a weak spot for trees. Ask Daphne, she'll tell you. Well, no, I suppose she won't tell you because she turned into a tree rather than be raped by the archer, and even then, he couldn't resist tweaking her leaves. Trees have a word for that sort of behavior. I think that gives you a good idea of the humor in this book. Next up, I want to tell you about VenCo by Cherie Dimaline. I also attended an online event that was co-hosted by the Vancouver Public Library and the Vancouver Writers Festival. It was a conversation between Cherie Dimaline and Billy Ray Belcourt about this book. Cherie Dimaline is a Métis author, and this is a story whose two central characters are a Métis woman from Toronto and her grandmother, who's starting to go senile, and they end up on a road trip having to do with witches and silver spoons and the Salem and evil patriarchy and the power of women, especially Indigenous, Black, and queer women, leading the way to dismantle patriarchy and make this world a better place. It's got a lot of magic in it from different parts of the world and land-based magic. So for example, in New Orleans, where Lucky, that's our main character, where she finds out about voodoo magic, she's told, this is not your magic. You need to use your own traditions, your own connection to your own land. Always a good reminder. A road trip, rollicking adventure, a great example of people from different generations working together and how important that is, and just an enjoyable read. I think it's interesting the similarities and the differences between the US and the Canadian covers. The US cover is on the left, Canadian cover on the right. Let me know in the comments down below which you would be more likely to pick up if you didn't know anything about this book. Just curious. And my last book, favorite book that I've read out of all of these, is another audiobook, The Terraformers by Annalee Newitz. They are non-binary. They're a science journalist as well as a novelist from the US. And Terraformers actually refers a lot to Saskatchewan locales. L'Orange is the main city on this terraformed planet, and they've recreated a boreal forest. So there are some other aspects that made me think of Saskatchewan. I don't know if Newitz ever has lived in Canada. It starts in AD 59,000, and I'm happy to read something that gives me the idea that human beings are still going to be around that far in the future, terraforming a planet from scratch and making it look like Saskatchewan. It falls under the category of solar punk, and it is told in 3 interconnected novellas. I first heard of the term solar punk from Booktube Goddess, and Goddess has also read this book. Didn't like it as much as I did because of the novella, interconnected novella format, but that worked really well for me. So in this world, beings, people, are made from microbes and organic fibers and minerals, and they might have robot bodies or animal bodies. The whole question of personhood is one of the things that is discussed in here. Humans versus animals, for example. There's a lot of romantic relations between so many different kinds of beings that it goes way beyond queer, I think. Capitalism, colonialism, living in an environment that is in balance and sustainable. These are other important issues in this novel that really grabbed my attention, and I was really intrigued by these characters. I'd like to read more set on Sask-E. I'm definitely going to read more by Annalee Newitz. If you haven't heard, there's a new Readathon coming up in April. Kevvie from Say Kevvie and Willow from Books and Bow are doing Trans Girl April Readathon. So Annalee Newitz might be an author for you to put on your TBR for that readathon if you're interested in participating. And that's all I've got for you today. I think I'll include a little bit at the end from my visit to the Muttart Conservatory, an indoor garden here in Edmonton. I just needed a shot of spring, I guess. Winter is long. Thanks so much for watching. I look forward to your comments down below, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now.